or we cannot actually materialize this. But Aaron Hernandez was more like a person who could never do away with this desire to be, like what, Popeye, or a certain person eager to prove the rule of justice. He couldn't actually tame his feast. He was a guy who could never keep his shirt on. If there is any burgeoning injustice, he would roll up his sleeve and he would step up to the plate and he would actually give a punch. He would actually pull no punches. Right? He's that kind of guy. As if he was driven by certain type of uncalled for desire to prove his manhood, his masculinity. And he was like that kind of guy. Hey, what are you taking me for? You think I'm actually idiot? And let me actually show you something. Like this kind of guy. He was always out there to demonstrate his, manhood or virility or masculinity. Hey, you think I'm actually an idiot? Ha! You know what? Let me show what it is to be a man. Oh my god, I never played it. The mind of, in the killer's mind, the mind of, inside the mind. Companion. I've never seen it, but it's really obvious. 아, 이거는 사면 안 돼요. 펜이 없단 말이에요. 아무거나 하나 주세요. With a frank out. You know what? Despite all, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this, Frank, though. You might not like it, but I'll tell you. I'll actually shoot it. Don't turn it off. 지금 끄지 말라고. You should never turn it off. Just a flea. Did you actually do the registration by going to the register? What are you doing? 그러면 안 나오잖아요. It's really fine. Oh, she's a real person. Oh, she's a really crown. Olivia, isn't that one? Yeah, I saw. I'll just do it. Let me actually show you. 그냥 얼마나 빨리 기억하는지 보여줄게. 10개만 하고 가면 안 될까? 상관없어요. 사람들 내가 늦게 본대요. You see, this is really the scene from My Sister's Wedding, right? You see, this is really the very scene from My Sister's Wedding March, right? The Virgin Mary? She's being actually sarcastic. Virgin Mary? Faithful handmaid. No, I don't fucking understand why. Just say something, I can write it down.
This should interest you because it's about stats and averages.
Mm-hmm. This should interest you. This is really about the stats and averages. This should actually interest you. You might, this should interest you means what? You might be pretty much interested in this. This might actually, get your attention for a while, because after all, this is all about the stats and averages, and this might actually really intrigue you. This could be very much riveting to you. This could actually be very much, stuff that might actually get your attention. This might actually be fascinating. to you because, it's all about eventually stats and the averages. Don't you not actually think that this is really nice? It's very funny. But I know who said that. Those are people who said that I don't really read a newspaper really quickly. That's the real reason why. Crosswords, no. Right now, the House passes a labor rights bill. However, the chances that we would expect to see this going through the Senate is really slim. The chances are slim. Chances are slim means, there are not many probabilities that we would see this, passage of labor rights would go through the Senate. That's a very easy. I just need a fucking pen, but I don't have it. I actually read something pretty much fascinating. What the fuck is wrong with you? House, passes. House has passed a bill of labor rights. There are not many chances. The Senate do the same. Senate does the same. The House passes a bill of labor rights, but there are not many chances. The Senate does the same. That means it might not actually, there are greater probabilities the Senate might not repeat the same reaction, the same action by repeating the same history. It's very easy. You want me to read it? I can actually read it really quickly. I don't really need to take a note. It's a really easy one. Right to organize. I'm done. So far, what has been actually done. Right now, the House led by the Democrats passed the bill. In the article, it has been written in the past tense, so I'm going to actually follow the very main paragraph instead of the headline. Although, in the headline, it has been written as the House passes a bill of labor rights. However, it was already done on Tuesday, so it has been actually stated that the House passed the bill of labor rights, which is called the PRO Act. This is, power to organization. That means it's bringing power back to labor unions and the regular workers throughout the nation. This is the most powerful legislative work backing up the labor rights ever since the New Deal. But the problem is, it would have almost no chance to survive the Senate. Because it is expected to run into a brick wall. That means it is not going to go anywhere once it is to be handled on the Senate floor, because the Senate is really heavily split and a divided organization at this moment. So there is no chance they would actually survive it, because the chances are slim means, we do not expect to see this would be likely to be the case in the Senate, just like the House, because in the right now House there is a huge majority for Democrats under the leadership of Nancy Pelosi. So it's really not a great deal, tell the truth, but still it is very meaningful. What is it? Why in the first place Democrats wanted to pass this bill? It had already passed in the House, is it true? It isn't more like giving a power back to labor organizations. There are so many barriers that might actually allow employers to punish their workers in case of forging or organizing labor unions or trying to have themselves unionized. Yeah, these are the real case. They might be either punished or they could be delegated, or there could be regulatory measures that could actually be very beneficial to employers. If you're on the payroll, but you might actually not cooperate with this union role, strictly stipulated by the employers, then this could eventually punish you. There are many different legal clauses. You could either be sued, or you could even actually be delegated or demoted, or you could even actually be put out to pasture. There are many different clauses, right? It's really up to the leniency of employers who hire you, right? But right now with this PRO Act, workers are more likely to act freely because there could be a protection that might actually offer them different chances. They can actually freely unionize themselves, or they can actually, rely on their main power to have a greater collective bargaining power. This is really the cause. And another issue here is, if you ever actually see this bill fully legislated by both the Senate and the House, from both the chambers, although there is almost no likelihood. Technically, there are very slim chances. That means it would be a tough battle. If this would be the case, then what would happen? One great thing is Lyft or Uber might not actually hire someone just simply based upon the contractual relations. So far, Uber and Lyft relied on this model of gig economy. They would classify their workers as self-employed or contractual or subcontract workers. Then, they do not really need to take care of the workers' compensation insurance, or they do not really need to provide a sufficient contributions to their social security or retirement package, right? Because they're not regularly hired by Uber or Lyft or any other small-sized companies like, the DoorDash also. So, if this bill would somehow manage to survive in the Senate, then we would expect to see the paradise for workers ever since the New Deal era. Because this would promise, almost intact guarantee for unionization and a greater collective bargaining power for workers, as well as no more abuse of power by employers by having their employees classified or categorized as self-employed or contractual subcontract workers. And these type of categories would give them leeway to evade obligations expected from normal employers. Think about it. They could not actually be held accountable in the case of a lawsuit. They might actually normally punish regular employers or job givers who might not actually pay a full contribution or partial contributions to the workers' retirement plan or workers' compensation package or even health insurance, right? They're normally regular companies are asked to share this burden by putting down their money and this greater collective investment in their personnel, right? It's very interesting because we would actually expect to see the expansion of the labor rights, giving a greater power to workers, so they can freely organize certain groups in case of conflict between the labor union and the boardroom. That means the head of the office would not actually appreciate the actual collective bargaining power by laborers. Normally, this would be brought to labor core, right? But right now, we would inside the core, we could expect to see a greater power invested in the body of a labor union. That's what it is likely to be the case. And that's really nice. But the problem is, no one is really that much optimistic about the survivability of this bill, because the Senate is really divided, almost 50-50. And it requires not just a mere majority, right? And even actually inside the Democrats, there are people who might not appreciate this progressive era's agenda, right? So this could be a tough battle, and we expect to have an uphill battle, truly uphill battle. It is already actually scheduled to encounter a stone wall. It is going to run into a brick wall, means that is likely to get stalled by a massive hampering coming both from Democratic parties as well as a Republican. Republicans are absolutely against this notion. However, this is more like a wooing gesture from Democrats to at least get back those white proletariats, those white workers who left for Donald Trump. They are desperately sought after by Democrats right now. Hello, would you join us again? It's time for you to wake up and realize what you had done to yourself. After all, following Donald Trump, what have you learned? You could not actually get anything, but we can offer you substantial benefits. If this is like wooing gesture, they were trying to make romantic advances to actually core those estranged white workers back into the boat, right? That's what they were trying to do. Because they left them. Those white lower middle class workers, they did not appreciate the elite dominated Democratic Party. So they were tempted and seduced by Donald Trump's Make America Great Again protectionism, right? They thought that this would bring back the glory of their parents' old days, right? But that was not really the case. However, this time, the Democrats have put down very substantial clauses, which would guarantee the increased bargaining power as well as unionizing power back to Labor Department. That means that those, everyday workers on the factory floor or regular employees on the payroll, they could claim greater stakes in this conversation across the nation. That's a federal law. So that's a really, amazing progress. However, there is an uphill battle in the Senate because, the upper chamber might not appreciate this view. So it would not likely to be the case. The chances are slim, means no one is that much optimistic about it. Unless there is such an almost miraculous organizing power by the Democratic Senate, right? But it's very tough. But however, it's really it's really also appreciated by Joe Biden. He was also willing to widen the scope of his supporters, right? He was always presenting himself as a pro-labor president, willing to pay attention to the very necessities of everyday blue-collar workers, right? So this seems really nice because, technically, someone like Bernie Sanders, who really wants to see a much more radical interpretation of labor power, he could actually, say no to it because he would not be fully satisfied. However, at this moment, he is very much expected to join this trial to revive the New Deal era's legacy. Yeah. What can I say? I just read it. It's not really difficult. But technically, let me actually set this down straightforward. In the headline, it was written, "This House passes a major labor rights bill. However, the chances in the Senate are slim." Everything, those two sentences were written in present tense. However, in the main body, the House passed the bill on Tuesday. I mean, it's not my mistake, because in the main body it was reported in the past tense, and I'm being very accurate about it, and the run into a brick wall. That means there is, a very serious challenge that could impede the entire progress of the bill as expected in the Senate. That means it would brace itself for uphill battle. An uphill battle, that means a hefty challenge. It's not going to be an easy work, right? No one expected this would be an easy fight. That means even after all the hard work, it's not likely to be it would not likely to be the case, given the hefty opposition stacking up against this bill inside the Senate. We might not expect to see this go through the Senate, right? There are greater chances. The odds are the Senate might not appreciate this effort, or the Senate might not repeat the same course. Yeah, the upper chamber is inclined to stall this progress by killing off the bill. That could be the chances. There are greater chances against the passage of the bill and adoption of the bill, right? So this is a more like the, giving a greater power for unionization. And even if this would be, even inside the company, for instance, in Amazon, there are certain people who are punished, who are eventually manipulated to give up the notion of unionization. They pay the hefty price. They were forced to give up something precious to them, right? But this type of power dynamics will be changed if and only if this legislation would be adopted from both chambers. Right now, there is a hefty battle in schedule, right? Because the unionization would be much more easy, and also there will be a legal shock absorber as a shield to protect everyday workers and blue collar employees who might not actually, have a friendly relationship with employers or the boardroom, because they were desperate to squeeze every drop out of working forces. So this could be a readjustment, trying to level the field. This is a one step closer to leveling the field, right? That's what has been said. You can actually say the level playing field, but we are not yet there. However, this could actually, witness almost unprecedented equity for unionized organizations as well as regular blue-collar workers. Because normally, they would be categorized as subcontracts. That means the benefits or the lucre they would be entitled to pick up would be minimized. And even if they actually, bring this case to court, or even they file a lawsuit against the formal employers, once they actually are let go, they could not actually sell their case properly because there are legal constraints imposed on the representation and interpretation of their rights as employees or former employees, right? Even after they're being fired. This would be a one major step to the equalization between labor rights and the and between labor rights and employers management, right? Because normally we have a history of witnessing the boardrooms or employers excessive abuse of power by reaming every cent out of the manpower of labor groups, right? The workers are being pushed to work with no proper protection for their future because they would be treated like commodities. right? This would be greater power for their unionization, or they can actually organize the groups to promote their interests. This is one great, advance. Not just simply, greater power for unionization, but there will be greater collective bargaining power and organizational power, so they can actually easily advocate their own interests as long as they put their heads together, as long as they gather their power to stand up against the bully, the war room, and they can actually experience enormous protection. This can be legally recognizable in the courtroom, and that's a great progress. And Uber and Lyft, who so far literally profited greatly from the labor disparity and iniquity, allowing them to hire someone without giving them a full access to employees' rights, right? Because, Uber's driver or DoorDash's driver would be hired, but they would be considered as self-employed. They were actually working on their own as if they would be very vaguely or thinly affiliated with the main corporation. The Uber would never provide the workers a compensation contributions. Or no, they would never put down their single penny. No contributions. Or there is no single undertake of the payment for the healthcare insurance for their employees. Because they have such a loosened relationships with their workers. It's like, having one foot in the grave and the other, and not really one foot in the grave. It's like, their worker is like this. Uber's worker is like having one foot inside the Uber as an employee. However, the other foot outside the group as a working entity alone, setting up their own tent to work as own self-employed owner and proprietor. So no one could actually take care of them. Once, this contract would be expired, there is no retirement package because so far Uber as an employer shared no responsibility at all. So no workers' compensation payment, no healthcare insurance, or what? Or no retirement package, or no severance fees. None of them. Because if you're really hired, at least your employer is about to pick up a certain portion of healthcare insurance fees, as well as workers' compensation insurance in case of OSHA related, occupational duty related, and industrial hazard or industrial accident, right? There is no put down, there's no premium undertaken by the Uber as an employer, and needless to say, no severance fee once you decide to make your departure official from the company, and no retirement package. And when you actually decide to step down, there will be properly accumulated amount of fees that would be paid out in the name of the retirement or severance fees, right? Retirement is more like pension. When you decide to actually go on a pension, you would actually normally pick up huge chunk of money, or you decide to get monthly paid fees. You have multiple choices. Either you would claim a lump sum amount, or you would actually decide to assign and allocated fees per each month, right? And these are all being blocked because they wouldn't be just recognized as a self-employed or acting alone worker. That means they would be almost similar to proprietor or freelancer or independent worker who has a very thinly veiled relationship with Uber as an employer. Uber is employer, this independent worker, independent employee has a very vague relationship with Uber or Lyft. The Uber and Lyft are employers who literally enjoyed this economic system because they were not asked to perform many of the duties normally expected from any job givers, employers, and hirers. Yeah, right? Then they just actually enjoy this wiggle room to save budgets, right? So They were not asked to cough out this money or shell out or cough up this amount of money, right? You can actually say that cough up and shell out. We're not supposed to shell out this amount of money, but if this bill is to be adopted in the Senate, even though chances are not many, then this would be the enormous expansion of a labor rights. That means the proletarian rights are going to be widely interpreted. There will be greater power back to regular workers on the factory floor, or just average workers picking up paycheck, right? Picking up paychecks, right? Those people are going to be greatly benefited. The first one I actually said a paycheck, but you can definitely say paychecks. Yeah. I don't really need to think, but I just wanted to actually clarify that. You know what? I leave from paycheck to paycheck. That means I actually barely scratch by, or scrape by, or get by. That means I actually similar to I actually have a very difficult way of living because my budget is limited and my cash is trained. Oh, I don't really need to think twice about it. It's very easy. I have to go.